Welcome to Know What I Mean. My name's Oscar.
My name's George. I felt like a very different episode to how we normally do things because it was really us doing a bit of an audit about our lives and how we spend our attention based on things that we say are important to us.
Yeah, I think this is an opportunity really to get to know us a bit better and the landscape of our lives. Because we do talk about our values and we talk about what we actually end up doing in this. So I hope you're interested and enjoy the episode. The quote for this week is by James Clear, and it goes as follows. How much overlap is there between what you say is important to you and how you spent your attention in the last month? I accidentally said spend, but I changed it to spent. So James Clear is the author of a book called Atomic Habits, which you might have heard of. It was really, really big like 2 or 3 years ago. And I listened to the audiobook. Now I'm rereading the book. So it's really like at the forefront of my mind. And Atomic Habits is putting forward the case for habits as being incremental change, small incremental change as being the most powerful route to becoming who you want to become. You know, whether that is in it, you know, any aspect of your life, basically, whether it's kind of spiritual things to career, to exercise, to, you know, all those elements of your life. And this book really covers that. And I'm really feeling quite inspired by it. Yeah. So that's kind of the context of this quote, is this book about habits. And I wanted to pick this quote because, as we mentioned last week, there's a potential for an audit here. And I'm quite excited by the idea of focusing this episode on how we're living our lives and our personal experience of this. Like, that feels quite exciting. So I was investigating this, and being that I am reading this book, Atomic Habits, at the moment, I was quite proud when I did my audit. I was like, I'm doing all right here. So first of all, it was quite a nice thing to look at and be like, oh, cool. I've definitely done more than I expected in terms of contributing towards the person that I want to be and the life that I want to lead. When I was looking at what's important, as it mentioned in this quote, you know, what do you say is important? The areas of my life that I really noted down were friendships and connecting with people, my spiritual practice, and my career or my artistic development. And doing this audit and having a look at those, I've definitely pushed myself socially. I've been to a few sort of gatherings, and me and my girlfriend Emmy, we went to a house party on for Saturday, and we only knew one person, the person who invited us, and it wasn't her birthday, it was her housemate's birthday. So we literally like knew one person going into this house party, and I just had the best time, and neither of us were drinking either, and just chatted to loads of people, played loads of games. So that was an example, and I was really like happy with how that went, actually. So in terms of spending my attention on friendships, then felt like a good example. And yeah, it was quite exciting. With my spiritual practice, I've been on a couple of weekend retreats, and I'm doing my daily meditation contract, which I can explain in a little bit. And in terms of artistic development, like, I've done a few talks and did a group show and things like that. So I'm really like quite like reflecting on that. I was like, oh, this is going quite well. But there are issues also, of course, with what I was looking at. And I guess the issues and the where what I'm saying is important and where my attention is doesn't align is really captured in this word attention. So in this quote, it says attention. It doesn't say time. So it's not how much time I'm spending doing something, it's how much I'm giving my actual attention to it. And I think that that's where I've been investigating a little bit more to do with this quote is really, what do I give proper attention to? So I've got a few things about that, but maybe if you want to.
Yeah, well, I was actually going to go on that thing, what you were just saying about the, you know, what things is it you're actually really giving your full attention to? Because I really think of living a good life, to me, there's two parallel tracks. There's the outward circumstances of your life. So, you know, just doing the things that make you happy, say being physically healthy, having friends, being financially stable, like all these different aspects that you would traditionally think make up a good life. And then there's the other layer, which is like actually really enjoying the present moment, enjoying all of those things, enjoying yourself as you walk down the street to do whatever you're going to do. And I really think that to live kind of a good and happy life, you want to be doing both of those. And it's kind of the, like the middle way. Like you're doing, you're practically trying to improve the physical circumstances of your life whilst also focusing on just enjoying what you're doing and focusing your attention on what you're doing. So that was definitely a big thing that I noticed from this week and like from doing this audit. Because I've kind of think of my values of, I have like the more, I don't know quite what the word would be for, but like my less concrete values, like the things of like connection, self-expression, autonomy, engagement, like those are things that I think are really important to me. And then I've got like there's more practical things. So that would be like food and shelter, health, family, romantic life. So they all kind of tie into each other, like those values I said first, they are kind of embodied in those practical, more like circumstance things. But yeah, really it's about trying to do both of those at the same time. Yeah, so that's kind of my initial thoughts of it. In a bit I can go into like some of the specifics.
Yeah, I'm curious to hear a bit of a breakdown of that first part of what you were saying was important to you and why those things are important to you.
So which one, like the connection and self-expression, those ones? Yeah. I'm not really sure if I could quite say why they're important to me. It's just things that I've noticed myself keep coming back to. When I think about the why I'm doing the things I'm doing, they often come down to those things. So, I really value my independence, being able to express myself how I want to express myself and feeling free to do that. So that's kind of where the self-expression thing comes in. And, connection is something that's very important to me. And that's, that can come from me connecting with another person, either like a family member or friends or romantic partners, or it can also be like connecting to life. And that kind of ties into my one of engagement as well, like just being engaged in whatever it is I'm doing. So yeah, that's kind of how I've arrived at those. And I found that, I know it's quite nice actually clarifying those things. I feel just within the last year or so, maybe even the last 6 months, those things have really become important to me, especially like connection and self-expression. I've thought about those things a lot, and they're things that a lot of the things that I do come back to those things. They're at the core driver of what makes me want to do a lot of the things that I want to do.
Do you have any examples you could run through in relation to those values of what you actually do with your time?
Yeah, so I guess with, say, self-expression, I think me and you might be quite similar in this, that we can be a bit introverted and like not always the center of attention and super outgoing, but that we do actually both enjoy doing that, or enjoy just letting loose and having fun and just being silly. And I think a lot of that is because it's something that's sometimes been tricky for us to like really let go and just mess around and not be all logical and serious and judging things and just have fun. So in that case, that's, often like on nights out, for example, when I'm with my friends or I'm at a club, just enjoying and feeling free and just doing what I want to do and having fun. And that's something that is really rewarding to me. And that's a good example of the self-expression. And I guess with something like connection, that really comes in, in all of those things where I'm with another human being. And it's easy to get caught up in just thinking about your story and you almost objectify other people, as you just see them as like these NPCs. You're just like, oh yeah, just talking to this person, and like it might be someone that you care about or a friend, but you're sometimes not really engaging with them. And when you take time to really like listen to them and really focus, and like it feels so much better to really like have that connection with people, and just to not get so caught up in your own stories and your ideas of what you want to say next and everything like that, and just really, really connecting with the people who are there. So that's a constant thing to work on.
Yeah, I guess when I was thinking about you, like in relation to what you were just talking about, and you know how you spend your attention in relation to what you say is important. Like, I guess, you know, I think like with self-expression, for example, like we've talked about before how, well, I guess we both been on a lot of creative endeavors and wanted to find channels of that self-expression, find channels of ways of communicating and ways of showing aspects of ourselves. I remember having a conversation that has been quite important, I think, both of us around last Christmas, where we were talking about our creative output, one of yours being your YouTube channel, and for me, you know, my kind of artistic output through Instagram, for example, and how we both have this thing of like really wanting to just be completely free to create, and also want people to enjoy what we're creating and not have to feel hindered by being too consistent and things like that, because sometimes that can kind of get in the way of being completely free to do what we want. And that being something that's important to you and a value of this self-expression, and how that's had to go along parallel with another desire to succeed and to build your following and things like that, that they have to find a way of cooperating. So you've got this like really strong value of self-expression, and you want to just be able to put out whatever you want to put out, for example. But then at the same time, when you have to, you know, if you're being pragmatic about it, you kind of have to rein it in to an extent. You know, it's like because for content creation, as lots of people will know, you really need to be consistent, and you have to have your niche, and you have to, you know, there's very few people that can just do whatever they want, totally have full self-expression and be loved for that at the same time. There's got to be kind of a consistency, which can feel limiting. And it's quite interesting how you've got that part of yourself that really just wants to lift off with self-expression, and you've got to kind of like work with that and kind of tame it to an extent at the same time. Yeah,
it's interesting because this is kind of like the biggest realization actually that I've had from this audit, because I was looking at my practical values, which were food and shelter, health, family, and romantic life. Those are the kind of things that are important in my day-to-day at the moment. I was breaking down at the moment, I'm actually recording basically everything I do. So I like track my days basically down to like 5-minute increments, which sounds like the nerdiest thing I've ever said. But yeah, I've done it before, and it's actually a nice way to plan my days and to get a handle on what I'm doing. So I did actually have that for the previous week. So I was able to go through and see, you know, where are the things that I'm doing? Where do they fit into the things that I say I practically value? And yeah, like you, I was actually pretty pleased. You know, I think I'm spending my time pretty well in general, but all of the areas were pretty good. Like they're all pretty balanced. But the thing that I was really neglecting was the YouTube channel. And I kind of put that because I had the YouTube channel under the value of like food and shelter, because it's like a, you know, something that I want to have to make money for myself. However, well, what I realized from doing this was like, I actually don't need it at the moment. It's not making me any money. So like, it's not really contributing to that. Like my job that I do at a restaurant, that's really what is actually paying my bills. So like, I'm not getting any money from doing the YouTube videos. I can still live perfectly happily without it. And all it's doing at the moment, it feels, is like taking away from those other things of like health and family and friends and romantic life. Like, and I think that was quite a big realization of like, there's clearly a misalignment. So it seems like I am doing the things that I value, but there was one of the things that I'm saying that I value is like this YouTube channel, but it's actually not really aligning very much with the other practical values that I have. So yeah, that was like quite a big realization that I'm trying to, you know, I'm still trying to think of what the best way is that I can kind of tie it into my values. And I was thinking that like one of the things that I do really value is creative expression, which is kind of like what you were talking about. That is something that, yeah, like as you noticed, is like something that's very important to me. So I think, you know, I need to maybe make the YouTube more something that I'm really enjoying the creative expression. Obviously I need to kind of, you know, keep up the consistency with it, but just trying to make it so it feels more like a creative endeavor rather than it feeling like it's this thing that I need to do to make money, because I don't really need to do it to make money, because I have enough money to like live and buy food and stuff like that. That's fine. But yeah, it's definitely something that I want to think about more and try and make sure that everything's aligned. But it was really interesting to see that clearly there was a misalignment there, and it was actually showing up in how I'm spending my time, which was quite interesting. There was such a direct correlation of like, this is the area that I'm neglecting most. And it seemed to be because it doesn't actually fit into these values properly. So yeah, no, that was really valuable insight, and definitely something that I need to think about a little bit more and try and kind of work out how best to move forward.
It's cool for you to be able to see that so clearly, and also that it sounds like it might need reframing in a way.
Yeah.
It just needs to be shifted. However you do that to a different category of more, you know, in the realm of self-expression, with the potential to, you know, be an income at some point.
Yeah.
I mentioned at the start of the episode this significance in the word attention as opposed to time. So what this quote could have said is, how much overlap is there between what you say is important to you and how you spent your time over the last month? But it says how you spent your attention over the last month, and I found that significant. So as I mentioned, I'm pretty happy overall with how things are going, you know, and how I'm spending my attention, which was nice, or how I'm spending my time at least. But what I have noticed is one of my values definitely is, my broader values, as mentioned, is kind of, well, is spiritual practice. And part of that umbrella is being able to be present and being able to do things wholeheartedly. I meditate every day. I'm going on meditation retreats. However, I do have a problem with multitasking, with not allowing myself to just fully do whatever it is I'm doing. So for example, even though I've got currently a habit, which, well, I've got a structure of that, I can only check Instagram 3 times a day. I can only check LinkedIn, Facebook 3 times a day. Somehow I still manage to fucking go on my phone for like, I think I averaged like 4 hours a day last week. I don't know what the hell am I doing on there? WhatsApp's not that interesting. I really have no idea how that's happening. I think part of it is that my phone doesn't, if I leave my phone, then it doesn't lock. So for some of the day, then I will have just had my phone out, and then it's just like racking up the time. Yeah. But like, what the fuck? Like,
does it show the breakdown of like what it is?
Yeah, I'll have a look now. So the most screen time for last week was on a Friday, and that was 6 hours and 15 minutes on my phone. Apparently, I mean, social media was 1 hour and 1 minute. Creativity? The hell is creativity? Oh, I know why. I've worked it out. So when I paint, then I use my phone as a reference for images. And I was painting on Friday, and I think I just had my phone out for like loads of the day. So that would be something to do there. And anyway, okay, so it's not as bad as all that, but nonetheless, for example, today I was coming back from my studio, and I was on the bus, and I felt very uneasy because I'd been listening to a podcast and working on this project for like a good portion of the day, and my attention when I was doing that was split. It felt important to be listening to a podcast at the same time as what I was doing. And that I have noticed, having my attention split in that way leaves me feeling quite uneasy. So I was sitting on the bus, and I was just feeling like quite not very good in my body. And I had to just be like, I'm just not checking my phone like for the rest of this journey, basically, because I have noticed that with how I spend my attention, the more that I try and split my attention between things, you know, when it's not enough to be doing whatever creative thing I'm doing, I have to be listening to a podcast simultaneously. I notice that I really like react quite badly to that. And it goes counter to what I say is important, which is, you know, mindfulness, is presence, is feeling, you know, is being fully with what I'm doing. So I'd say wholeheartedness and mindfulness is definitely the area that I need most work in, because it feels like stuffing my attention with content and things is just such a habit, you know, it's such a strong current to do that, to really try and, as you've kind of mentioned, like to fill up, I want to fill up my bandwidth. I want it all taken up. And I don't do well doing that. Like I really notice it, and it's at odds with my values. And I can feel that, like sitting on the bus, where I'm a bit disappointed in myself as well. You know, it's not just that I feel restless or a bit like, you know, it's just like, why did I do that? You know, like I was doing a nice activity. I didn't need to try and add loads of stuff to make it even better. So yeah, that's definitely like wholehearted attention is an area for me that I feel it needs work. That's my reflection.
I think the quote for next week is going to be good for that. Actually, I think it's going to balance this out nicely. So, I mean, there's a few like practical things from the week that I noticed. If you're curious about those, like I said, I've recorded pretty much everything over the last week, and I kind of noted down a few of the slip ups. One of them was not double checking the episode when I uploaded it last week. The podcast is something that's important to me, but you know, I was just quickly doing it. Can't remember. I think I had to redo something, or it was later than I wanted to be doing it, whatever. And I just quickly did it and then rendered a new version. And I didn't check that I had lowered the volume of the audio. So for a little while, until Oscar noticed it the next morning, the audio on the podcast was like super loud. So I had to like re-upload it. And, you know, that just meant it took longer in total to do it. And it's not professional. Like I want this podcast to be good for you, whoever's listening to it. I want you to like listen to it and be like, oh, it feels like they've taken care to make a good episode, and they're not just like blasting it out. So that's definitely a takeaway, that I just want to make sure that I'm checking that. And, you know, a way to do that as well is just getting the podcast edited sooner, because, you know, I can check it myself, but also it's nice when you listen back to it, you usually listen back pretty much as soon as I uploaded it or soon after. And, you know, if there's anything that I might have missed, then you could mention it like happened there. Like if I'd uploaded the podcast a day earlier, then you probably would have listened and mentioned it, and it would have been fixed before it was rolled out to everyone else. So that's another thing. And I spent like about 7 hours or so throughout the week of just kind of consuming content like YouTube, browsing Instagram and stuff like that, which I think is like, compared to a lot of people, is like relatively low to be just doing an hour a day. But I don't find it very rewarding. Like looking back on it, that just content consumption doesn't really tie into any of my values at all. You know, so it is not really something that I want to spend my time doing. And also, yeah, there were 2 days where I had like a lie-in for like 2 hours. And that meant I missed like about 3 hours of work and 2 of my workouts this week. And I think a lot of that as well was me a lot of it has been tied into me procrastinating making the videos, to be honest. I think that has been like a big thing that's kind of come up recently. I've felt like quite a lot of friction in doing the YouTube videos. So it's been good to actually reflect on that, try and bring it to light and see how I can reframe it, or what I can do to kind of keep motivated and keep making good videos that people are going to enjoy watching.
Yeah, that seems like a good example. Like that's probably the clearest example recently, I guess, of where what you say is important to you, as in you say your YouTube channel is important to you, and you say that, I mean, I would have put it in the creative expression category, but you put it more in the financial one. And it's like, say that's important, and yet that isn't what's happening at the moment. It's really, really difficult for that to get done. And I think that is, you know, it is interesting to reflect on like what what aspect, and I guess we have done in this episode, like what aspect of it are you struggling with? Like there is something out of line there, and there's friction. And I think that's one of the things of this habit book is the more friction that there is between you and the habit you want to get into and the thing you want to fulfill, then the less likely it is you can do it. And by friction, an example of that might be you want to go running, yet you don't really have any clothes that you run in. Like you don't know where your clothes are. You don't maybe have any running shoes. Say you don't have any running shoes, right? That creates a lot of friction, because every time you want to go running, you're there and then you're like, oh, fuck, what shoes am I going to wear? Like, I didn't know how to do this last time, And all these barriers get in the way. So it means the whole process of actually just getting out the door and going running is really, really difficult to do. And in this case, it's kind of slightly different in that it just sounds like it's more of there's friction in the motivation side of things. Of like, there's a lack of clarity of why you're doing it, what does it fulfill, what really motivates you to do it. And that's, I guess reducing friction in that area would be actually reflecting on why. There's an emphasis in this book which talks about with what you want to do, it's really the best thing to reflect on is who do you want to become? Like, what kind of person do you want to be? And it's like, it's not just your output, but like, is it important for you to be tenacious and like consistent and to be getting content out there or having the self-expression in spite of everything? Is that the kind of person you want to be one of those people that could be, how like a lot of people who end up getting famous on YouTube, talk about having years of people like no one watching anything. And do you want to be that kind of person that will have gone through that, will have gone through those stages of no one watching it, no one listening to it, and still you persisted and, it worked out, because that's a certain character trait, I guess. Anyway, slight ramble, but like it is interesting to think of like, who is it? Like, who do I want to become? Like, what kind of person do I want to become? And then like, what activities make sense to that person?
Yeah, that's helpful. Yeah, thank you. Were there any other things that you noticed from this, like bits where there was a disconnect or any little bits that didn't seem aligned?
The wholehearted attention thing really is, it's such a big one, because it really encompasses so many different things. It's like, even with my meditation, so I'm meditating every day, generally for 40 minutes, sometimes for 20 minutes. And it's like, I know on the mornings when I really am not feeling particularly wholehearted about it, or I'm not connected with my inspiration, it's debatable how much benefit the practice has. I think it does, but being that my mind is so much more likely to be going off into other different stories that are more entertaining than what I'm doing, the benefit of doing that practice is so like is really becomes a lot smaller when I'm not actually connected with that inspiration really. And sitting on the computer, doing work in my studio, allowing my attention to be split, allowing me to check my phone as soon as a message comes in, and not completely focus on what I'm doing. It basically, what it means is that I feel what is going well is I'm investing my time in what I say is important to me. That seems to be the case. I'm being consistent with my habits, in these areas of socializing, so friendship, spiritual practice, and career artistic development. I feel like I really can see a map of that, and I'm thinking my time is being spent on those things. Definitely. That's great. I think the next step for me really is, how fully am I giving my attention to these things when I am doing them? And that feels like a really big step up for me, because 10 minutes of really dedicated work is worth way more than an hour of like distracted work. It's like really giving your attention to something fully is the outcomes of that is so much greater than a sort of hazy distracted state. And so really that is the next step for me, I think, is working on that wholehearted attention.
Awesome. Well, I feel like we both got like some cool, quite different insights from this. So like on the two sides that I was talking about, one which is, on the practical day-to-day of time really, and one is more, like about attention and more about how you're showing up to those those practical things that you're doing in your life. So yeah, I hope people listening, like, it's been helpful to hear these different things. And I would definitely recommend, rather than just thinking about it quickly, like really take some time to do the audit, because I didn't think about this until later in the week. I kind of half got there, or like had some of these realizations and did the audit of how I'm spending my time and how they match with my values. But only doing my final review of the notes before the podcast, I actually kind of came across this misalignment and started to get more into why that might be. So yeah, I think there is a lot of value in really going into it and not just superficially thinking like, oh yeah, I think I'm, mostly aligned, or like maybe some things aren't. I think it is really valuable to like have a deep dive into it. So are you ready for next week's quote?
As ready as I'll ever be.
So the quote for next week is actually from a comedian called 𝗚𝗲cie𝗿𝗴𝗲. And the quote is, "Life rips if you make it rip." So in this context, like, life rips is like kind of like life's awesome. And that's kind of the meaning behind this quote. So yeah, I thought it needed a little bit of extra explanation. It basically is, life's awesome if you make it awesome. So it's just and it's something that I found myself saying to myself quite a lot recently. And it's like a really nice little reminder. It's something that pops into my head a lot. And I hope that it pops into your head, Oscar, over this coming week, and to the heads of our listeners. Life rips if you make it rip. Thanks for listening, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this episode. And if you did, then you can share it with friends and family or whoever you think would enjoy this. And if you've got any thoughts about the quote, then you can send us a message on Instagram, which is knowwhatimean.podcast, or you can send us an email. The link's in the description. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week. Peace.